Welcome to the Forward Together webinar series, brought to you by the School of Management at California Lutheran University. The series is designed to bring interesting topics and people to our global community of students, alumni, and leaders in business and government to empower, educate, and inspire. Forward Together features experts from industry with the purpose to spark thought, connect people, and stimulate engaging discussions. Please submit your questions in the chat. We will hold a Q&A immediately following the presentation.
Good afternoon and welcome to Forward Together. My name is Mike Panesis and I'm your guest host today in place of Gerhard Apfeltaler. That means, for those of you of a certain age, I am Joan Rivers to Gerhard's Johnny Carson. What that means is you'll think I'm funnier at first, but in no time you'll be wishing for your regular host. Gerhard will be back with us soon. I'm thrilled to be able to host this session today with a very special guest. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Executive Director of Cal Lutheran Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. We just added that word innovation. We started focused solely on entrepreneurship, and we now realize that what we study and what we talk about has broader applicability than solely launching a startup. Innovation is something that we do every day in our business, and it's something that's especially important during a time of crisis. And during a crisis, our instinct is, when there's a huge problem that we're facing, is to go with our gut, to go with our instinct, to go with our experience, and not to wait a beat, analyze what's going on, look at the facts around us, make sense of them, and decide what we should do next. In addition to that, if we were really planning ahead, we'd be thinking about it before the crisis happened. And when we think of a crisis, we think of something that's relatively short-lived, that comes and goes, and we're now sadly experiencing this crisis that's gone on for a long time. And really, to operate effectively in this kind of environment, you need to be able to analyze the world around you and to make sense of how that affects your business and what to do next. So that brings us to our guest speaker. Today's speaker is Hamed Khalkhali, who is an up-and-coming Cal Lutheran MBA student. He also has a day job. He's the Vice President of Engineering for AeroVironment. AeroVironment is one of those local companies that you may not have heard of, is working on crazy innovative stuff that Hamed can talk about. But I remember AeroVironment all the way back to its founder, Paul McCready, who was a pioneer in the field of human-powered flight. You may recall that he designed the first human-powered aircraft that crossed the English Channel. He founded AeroVironment 40 years ago. And many people are just hearing about it now. So this is a great example of a company that took 40 years to be an overnight success. But I'm really looking forward to hearing Hamed's talk. Hamed, over to you.
This is an honor to be invited at the home university. I started my MBA about 2 years ago, and another 4 courses I have to finish. And because I'm taking one course per quarter, and it's taking time because of the day job I have, as Mike said, but also it's a great opportunity for me to take every course that I have and apply to my work every quarter, basically. And it's very beneficial for me. I want to share with you in this lecture and discussion how I'm using things that I have learned and the extra books that I read about it in my daily job, and why I'm doing this. That is more important. The topic I pick, quantitative strategic decision making during a crisis, is a bunch of words together, but each of these words have a different meaning, but in reality they actually combine together, imply a different type of a meaning. And we're going to discuss each word separately and then putting it together and see how it works, basically. Now, on the strategic side, we are all familiar with the strategy. A strategy is a path that taken by a troop leader, for example, and leading a team to through a certain situation. And the key point of a strategy is the uncertainty that is come with it. If you are in a bus and the bus driver taking you from one location to another location, that is not really a strategic approach, because the point A and point A are very well known. They are on the map. You just need to take the road and get there. That is not really an example of leadership. A strategy is important when you're trying to define that path and ensuring you reach to that path with level of certainty. Now, the quantitative part is part that comes with the measuring really what the goal is, what is your success, has a lot of mathematical background. Myself being an engineer, that's the part that I truly really enjoy to combine with the business training that I'm getting. And I think more and more complex decisions are being made by industry, specifically on the crisis time, and it had to be very quick, but it has to be right. And the only way to do that is to apply quantitative methodology, in my opinion. So all of those strategic and quantitative skills come together at a point to make a decision. One thing that I always tell my team, that we're here to make the right decision, not any decision. If you cannot, or we cannot have concession on this decision to be right, it's better not to make it. So the point of doing study on a strategy, doing homework on quantitative approach, is to help you to make that decision rightfully. And crisis is something that happens externally. It happens internally as well. Right now, our country is exposed, or our world actually exposed, to a crisis that is happening externally, and we have to cope with it and we have to deal with it. But a lot of times, even if you do not have a national stage crisis, there are crises in the company. Your supplier goes bankrupt and you had that supplier only, to deal with. What are you going to do? It's a huge crisis. One of your key members of the organization is leaving the organization. That is a crisis as well. Bathrooms are all clogged in all of the buildings. That's a crisis as well. So crisis could have all kind of a different shape and form, and dealing with them amazingly require strategic skills, quantitative knowledge, and decision-making approach. So let's start with decision. We're not going to go in the order of a strategy, quantitative, decision, and things. We're going to start with building this story from the decision side of the equation. On the decision side, you have two types of a decision to make. There are adaptive decisions, they are tactical decisions. In my opinion, tactical decisions are easy. Tactical decisions are the decision that you have to make, almost they have short-term effect. You basically trying to make a decision, should I buy this product, make this product, what should be my strategy in the next 3, 4, 5 years to build a company. Those are all tactical, in my opinion. Some of them you need more elaborate, but still they are tactical. What is more difficult is the adaptive part of the decision making. Adaptive part is about how to change the belief system of the people. People operate based on a belief system they have. They build a behavior and plan based on the belief system they have. If I believe this is an easy job, I quote believe, it's not backed by facts. If I believe this is an easy job, of course I'm going to plan poorly for it, and I'm going to be away from the target. So in this case, you don't come back to that person and start giving a lot of training to that person how to plan. How to plan is not really the problem. The problem is the belief system. To break that belief system so the person understands the scope of the problem regardless of what he believes. Keep that in mind, regardless of what he believes, because we're going to come back on that more and talk about that more. And of course, this process is a iterative process, is a loop, and you have to go. In my opinion, the adaptive part of it is extremely difficult, and it takes time. And a patient leader is somebody who can do that. So I want to solve the problem. This is a simple classic example. If you even do Google how to solve problem, it comes up with all kind of different approaches, but majority of them have these 7 steps in it. The first step is to identify the problem, collect the proper information, identify the alternatives, weigh the evidence, choose among all alternatives, take action, and review your decision. What is the common mistake? You might say, if this is so easy and it's mapped out here, I can do it every day and I should get good results. We talk about that in a different slide, how it is related, planning to getting good results. It's not a direct one-to-one connection. But the problem here, majority of the managers or leaders, what they miss is identify the alternatives. Before they start collecting information even completely and comprehensively, they already have a solution in mind. And when they have that solution in mind, the rest of the steps get skewed basically. Alternatives are not looked carefully. Evidence are not looked carefully because you already have a solution in mind and you're building the rest of the story based on that solution. And that's damaging. That's the part that we have to stop. Now, each of these have a definition. I don't want to go to each definition and specify what it is, but in my opinion, the most important part is the first step. Identify the problem, right? If your supply chain is always late and the materials that you are waiting always come late, well, one option is to see if the UPS delivery contract that you have is good. The other option is to look at your own receiving department to see if they have the right processes to do their job, right? So you have to identify exactly what the problem is. Is the problem is the UPS, or is the problem is related to basically our own internal processes, and so forth. You can define each step, and I'm not going to go that. These are common public information, and it's easy to do. What kills this process is the fact that people have biases. Each of us individual, through the evolutionary path of human being and collecting knowledge for millions of years, and recently in the past 12,000 years, we developed biases. These biases helped us to survive. But right now, in a modern human being and in a modern technology and society, these biases are not helping us to survive. These biases actually doing completely opposite. And in order to control these biases, the only way to do that is through quantitative approach. We cannot change who we are as a human being overnight. If it took 12,000 years to be here, maybe it takes another at least 2,000 to 3,000 years to get there. But meanwhile, what we can do is rely on quantitative approach in order to clean ourselves from biases. Also use biases in the right way. What do I mean by that? So bias is always giving you a good guts feeling. You know, you look at the weather out of your window and you can guess that it's warm, it's cold, what kind of a clothes I want. I really don't need to measure the temperature to see if 72 degrees outside temperature, this is what I need to wear. And if it is 73 degrees, I wear something else. So a lot of biases and gut feeling are really good, and we have to capitalize that. But the way to capitalize that is through associating them with some numerical value that we can use in daily work of management and decision making. A lot of people ask, what can we really measure? The belief is everything can be measured. Just because you don't know how to measure it or you cannot measure it, it doesn't mean that it cannot be measured. The best example is time. Time is a man-made concept. It's an intangible concept, but we as a human being started measuring it since 1,000 years ago, and we're using it on everything. There is no time. Can you go buy 1 kilo of hour somewhere? Can you go and transfer 2 minutes of your time from today to tomorrow and so far? No, None of those things happen. This is a very good example of an intangible parameter that we converted to a factor to be measured. Now, if you're trying to measure, for example, performance. Performance is another intangible parameter. How do I measure performance? What you need to do is you need to break it down to the smallest pieces that is measurable. As long as you have pieces that you think I cannot measure, then you're not done. You got to go lower level and break it down to lower level. Now, let's assume I did all of those things. Now I'm able to measure everything. I have numbers in front of me and everything, but at the end of the day, we're human. We're not making decisions just based on number. Our character, which is a combination of our personality and experiences, are combined together, come to the power. Actually, there is a very well-known study done by a professor at UC Riverside that 50% of the happiness coming to people are genetic. You can't do anything. Some people are born happy, some people are born unhappy. And 40% of that depends on your own effort, and 10% of that is really your environmental condition. And for you to make your, basically make decisions over thousands of the years, our brain has been trained to take two approaches. These are called approach 1, approach 2, or they call system 1 and system 2. Daniel Kahneman, who is a psychologist, Stanford psychologist, came up with this terminology back in 70s. He actually won a Nobel Prize in economy in 2002 or 2003, if I'm not mistaken. He's a psychologist, but he won a Nobel Prize in economy because his study in psychology was how people basically using their system 1 and system 2 to make trade decisions in a stock market. Now, on the reptilian response, it's all on your unconscious. You take quick actions about things, hot reaction, flight and fight mode, and biases that you have. And they have been all productive, and they all have showed that they could save our life. Absolutely, they have done it for thousands of years. And they all generate a different type of a behavior. You know, the hot reaction creates anger. The biases create prejudices. The flight and fight mode create animalistic behavior. And those, as they were good for survival, they are not good to run an organization successfully. And in the between, there is a gut feeling that you have, which is a great thing to be able to separate the cognitive biases and the reptilian biases and build something about it. So if you remember the discussion we have about gut feeling, and I did not dismiss it, that is exactly why I need that here to be able to build something upon it. The cognitive biases, or system 2, is something that will help us to think, to take a pause, to do analysis, to debate, to reflect on what decision we are making, what are the consequences, what are the alternatives. Remember from the past slide, alternatives is always missed. This is our opportunity to look at the way we are making cognitive decisions and how we can use that other alternatives. And combination of all of these things together create a human being who has a personal style, who basically consider everybody's opinion, and it's very collaborative. And that's how exactly you can make distinction between different leaders in the company. And if you close this loop, that is your experience. So although you cannot really change that much of your personality, but you can definitely on a daily basis change your experiences, and by combining this together, become a better human being. My philosophy is you cannot be a better manager, a better leader, if you're not a better human being. That's for sure. Now, what are the biases? Let's talk about biases a little bit. There are many biases, actually. There are over 18 different biases in the book, but we're not going to go through all of them. 3 famous biases, or main important biases that really create problem in our life, are anchoring, heuristic, and projection. And they are all related to a cause that they have, and there is mitigation for them, by the way. So yes, these biases exist in all of us, but there is also mitigation, how to control these biases, and we have to do that. And the only way to do that is by increasing the knowledge we have and control and practice. Let's give you an example, the anchoring bias. Somebody shows you a $1,200 shirt and you panic. You said, no, I'm not going to buy a $1,200 shirt. And then somebody else shows you a $100 shirt immediately as an alternative. And you say, well, that's a great price. I'm going to buy this t-shirt. In reality, a $100 t-shirt was never in your budget, and it was considered up to yesterday very expensive. You only wanted to spend $20, $25 for a t-shirt. But the $1,200 option always basically clouded your mind and created an anchor for you that $1,200 is very expensive, therefore $100 should be cheap compared to $1,200. Heuristic one is going back to basically the setup that you have in your mind. And you always believe in things that are not correct, really. There is an example here, but I want to give you another example. The other example has been done as part of the studies of Daniel Kahneman in Stanford over multiple different classrooms in different universities. If you ask a student, how many of you think that you are in the top 20% of your class, 73% of the people raise their hands. How could that be possible? 73% be on the top 20%. That shows we people always overthink of ourselves or our capability. And that actually is a good thing and a bad thing. It's good that it helps us to take a bigger responsibility, but it's bad that we don't plan for that bigger responsibility. And projection is something that we constantly deal with it. You know, I fight for this, to buy this house somewhere, and I buy it and I realize, well, you know, I always wanted a lake house. Now I'm dealing with mosquito every day. And, or I'm going to get this promotion, things is going to be great. No, you're going to have all kind of a different problem to deal with. And these biases really disappoint you and it stops you from performing very well. How do I deal with biases? Statistical data, crowdsourcing, gut feeling that I measure. Crowdsourcing is very useful by talking to your colleagues, by collecting sample from people and information and get data. Statistical data always create a sort of a data that is distributed and gives you a better judgment of where people are basically. This is a chart showing that high performer, low performer, and average performer in any organization, you know. And this kind of a distribution data helps you that, hey, I can make this decision as long as I know what's the probability of that, right? So if somebody tells you, hey, today is going to be rainy, although in Southern California, it's 104 degrees right now, my answer is yes, it could be rainy, but the percentage of the possibility of that is 0.0001%. There is never zero, there is never 100%. That's the mentality that you need to grow and look at everything with the possibility and probability of happening. Now, I identify the variables. That is great. That's the first thing I need to do to make my decision. And I have to break the variables as small as possible. One of the common mistakes done in this part of collecting variable for my quantitative analysis is I feel that things are related to each other. For example, if somebody is high performer, that must be trustworthy as well. In reality, a lot of parameters that we pick are not really in line with each other, and there is no linear relationship with this. Actually, this is also another study that has been done, that performance and trustworthy in leaders are not coming together. They are actually orthogonal. You could have a high performer who is not trustworthy, or you could have a low performer who is trustworthy. So you have to decide what are the parameters that are independent exactly from each other. And when you do that, then you come to the next step to rank them. There are well-known Six Sigma approaches on the quantitative methodology of how to rank this parameter, which one is more important, and then take them and assign a weight function and utilize them and pick the top 2 or top 3 in order to use them for your decision-making process. It is not helpful to have a variety of 200 different parameters. It's a complex model and it's not getting anywhere. Even if you want to have a complex model, you better have a simple model first and build on the simplicity to get to the complex model. So now let's talk about a strategy. On the strategy part, strategy is a path, is a vision that goes through goals, plans, action, and end with success. And this path as a strategy needs to rely on two different things: system and processes, people and culture. Most often, people and culture are ignored. I worked in a company, Parker Aerospace, that we work on F-35. The jet fighter is a very advanced, it's the most advanced jet fighter that exists. It can do things that it's unbelievable in terms of maneuverability. But do you know what is the bottleneck of F-35? The bottleneck of F-35 is the pilot. Why? Because the pilot cannot take certain Gs over. I believe today, I started working 28 years ago. And I remember at that time, my first job was in General Motors. I was an engineer. There was no Microsoft Office. There was no Excel. Everything was done with basically fax and things like that. Later and later, we got updated on our tools. We got Microsoft Excel. We are doing analysis. We have MATLAB Simulink. Designs got better. Everything got better. So it's like that F-35. All of the equipments are right up to date and very, very high tech and high performer. But we should invest the same as our people in the organization, because then they become the bottleneck. If we have managers, if we have leaders that their decisions are clouded by biases they have, or they don't collect quantitative information, or they don't collaborate with the team members and peers they have, those are the bottlenecks of the organization. Doesn't matter if you buy a F-35 with all of those bells and whistles, if you put some pilot behind it that does not know how to run this machine perfectly, it just doesn't matter. So I believe in 2020, in the high-tech technology, I know every day we have new stuff coming and new applications coming, companies making millions and billions of dollars overnight, but still the bottleneck is people and culture. And if they do work on those and they create the next generation of the leader that are quantitative, that are strategic, it's going to be even better. Now, we talk about planning and outcome. And a lot of people make this mistake that if I plan very well everything, it's going to be a great outcome. The reality is, this is not one of those relationships that the parameters are in line and parallel with each other. This is another actually example of how planning and outcome are two parameters that are orthogonal. You could have good planning, bad outcome. You can have even bad planning and still get a good outcome out of that. What's the difference? The difference is in a strategy and how you are executing that. And it is very important. Make no mistake, put enough time to have a good plan, but that's not the end of the story. That's not even half of the job. The most important part of the job is to have a strategy to get the outcome you want. Now, I look at my decision-making basically approach. That's the discussion I have always with my team every day, that give me the answer that is 85% correct today, rather giving me an answer that is 100% correct 2 weeks from now. Because time matters. Time matters a lot in making decisions. I rather have an 85% correct answer today and pass it through a risk analysis, which I can do in one afternoon, and find out what is the risk of this 15%, and have a mitigation plan, and then have a marching forward, basically. And keep my eyes open, by the way. I know there is, I am 2 weeks behind to have 100% of all of the data collected. So I have to have a closed loop going back constantly to make sure that my risk is updated, my mitigation plan is updated, and all of those things. What happened in crisis is you have risks that are not managed properly or are not even counted properly, and that crisis happened. In a scenario inside the company, is the time when you did not count for having a second sourcing. Therefore, if your supplier goes out of the business, you're doomed. Outside in the national crisis today that we have, planning with the scenarios of what happened if we do this, what would happen if we don't do that. and they're running models, analysis, and coming with all of those things with mitigation for risk for each of them, rather than just picking one and go. Sometimes you have to do things in parallel in order to reduce your risk. That's your only mitigation plan. Now, one book I read that changed my mind, and I'm going to show it on the references, was the book called Thinking in Bet. You know, as an engineer, we always are trained that 2 + 2 is 4. Life is a game of chess. A strategy is a chess. But in reality, that's not true. Life is like a poker. You get a hand that you have no control, and you have to play best with it. And you get one hand, by the way. Okay, there is no do-over. Daniel Kahneman, again, our economy Nobel Prize winner, had a famous sentence that it says, success is equal hard work plus luck. But more success is a combination of a little bit more hard work, but a lot of more luck. So luck really plays a very important role in what we are doing. So that's why I said, yes, you can plan for everything very good, but it doesn't mean that it's going to come up with the good outcome. Luck plays on it. But that doesn't mean that I should sit back and say, you know what, let's see what luck does for me today. That means you have to have risk mitigation plan and count for everything. If it's a good luck, great. If it's a bad luck, you got to have all of the things, all of the questions ready. That's why countries, for example, FEMA is prepared always for 5 tornadoes per year, because statistically they know these 5 tornadoes coming and I need to be prepared. One year, something might not happen at all, great. One year might be 6, but at least I have been prepared for 5 of them. We have to get in what-if scenarios. These what-if scenarios really help us to manage all of our risk and decision-making during crisis. Point of the crisis is that is not certain. Uncertainty is the core of crisis. How do I play with something that is uncertain? You have to play millions of different type of scenarios. With today's computer power that we have, even using traditional linear models or evolutionary statistical models based on Bayesian theory, more advanced game theory is very much one of my favorites, which was established back in 1950s. Another, it's a mathematical concept, another Nobel Prize winner for a mathematician, basically. And most recently, artificial intelligence. All of these things are here to help us to identify the risk, come up with all kind of a plan, reduce the risk, have the management for it. And the reason for that is business continuity, because you don't want to shut down your business for your whole country during the crisis. That is for sure. You want to have things are running, but how? And that how is the important part of it. How you can do that with the least amount of damage, basically. I always say build a small, simple model with more accuracy rather than having a big, complex model that has all kind of variables in it, but it's not accurate, or it has a lot of uncertainty. Now, at the end, if I want to finish everything in summary, you have to determine what kind of a decision you want to make, collect the right information, quantify the goal, quantify with numbers, create an analytical model, run what-if scenarios so you are prepared for all kind of things that is happen, analyze the results through traditional model or artificial intelligence, modify your decision constantly. Modify your decision constantly, and continue this loop as you go. Today's successful leaders are people who have business knowledge, who have analytical skills, and on top of that have knowledge in psychology, because they need to know the people, they need how to bond the people, and they need to know how to elevate people to their best, basically. Almost every page of this presentation came from one of these books, by the way. And I try to summarize each of these books into one page. But if I want to do 3 of these books as my favorite and say, if you read these 3 books, it gives you a lot of knowledge. On the psychology part, I would recommend this Jungian psychology. Jung was a psychologist at Freud time. He was an Asturian guy, and he came up with all of these theories about conscious and unconscious and biases and human evolution effect on decision making and our brain. The other one that I'm very big fan of is this Thinking Fast and Slow, written by Daniel Kahneman, the Economy Nobel Prize winner. This is a great, great book. And the last one here is Thinking in Bed, written by Annie Duke. And that is a great book of basically telling you life is not a game of chess. It's more like a game of poker. And therefore, how do you need to adjust your decision making based on that? And the rest of them are great book as well. And by that, I end my talk. Thank you very much for listening. And I believe Mike is going to take some question, and I hope I can answer them.
Thank you very much, Hamed. So many questions. So let's start with, make sure if you have a question, please enter it into the Q&A section of Zoom. This is an opportunity to ask questions of someone who has a lot of knowledge of planning, obviously. So please take advantage of this opportunity. So we have our first question about quantitative modeling. When you're doing quantitative modeling, how much do you allow for random events to derive the model?
So depending how you're looking at the system that you have. So traditionally, the answer was always none. You know, you always try to basically have a path and go through that. And the main reason was because our limitation on computation capacity. Today, with all of this power that you have on CPU, you can actually create a neural network and run a program overnight and come back with millions of different combination. So our job, the way my job is at my level, yes, I don't go to that much computation, statistical analysis. I use Monte Carlo often. I use crowdsourcing very much with my team. But I know at the engineering level, when they have to make decision for components and for algorithm of how to perform, yes, they go through all of these things very detailed, very detailed. They spend months of developing models for that.
Is there a particular technique that you like more than others? I've seen Monte Carlo used a lot, kind of as just well, let me make sure I have all my options covered.
Monte Carlo is my favorite. And it's easy to run it on Excel, and I rely on the results. But one of the other things also is, after you make your model, you do the Monte Carlo, you get the results. It's important to start playing with your model to see if it makes sense. You know, if I change this, really, it's going to have this kind of an effect.
Okay. And what do you do in the, I'm going to ask a couple of follow-up questions, and we'll go to the next one.
Sure.
What about a black swan, to paraphrase, or to use the title of another book that shows up on popular lists, where you can't plan for it. You have to adapt when it shows up, and you need to be able to identify that it's happening as early as possible, which seems to me kind of like a poker kind of play as well. How do you make sure that you can adapt to what you can't plan for?
So first of all, let's face the reality. This is not just adaptation. This is adopt or die, because a lot of companies die like that. Look at the list of the companies that started 120 years ago, the Dow Jones. How many of them has left? Look at General Electric's stock today, is at $4 being exchanged, you know? And these are the companies that they couldn't handle the black swan. So don't be surprised if a black swan and you said, hey, I cannot handle it. The best situation is you have to be realistic, assess the damage, what is the damage, and accept it and say, okay, this is my loss. This is my sunken loss, and I'm going to take it, and I'm going to move on to the next step. Dwelling around it is not going to help you at all. We as a human being, that's another thing in Kahneman book, if you read, If we win $20 in a roulette game in Las Vegas, we come leave and I said, yeah, okay, I won $20, you know. If you lose $20, oh my God, it's the end of the world. I lost $20. I'm going to go back, get my money back. You know, we have always, we don't take the loss very well, which is great. That's how we survive in this world, you know. It's understandable. But on the business, you have to be the mature one and say, you know what? I didn't expect this one. It came, it got me. I lost.
Yeah. That is my limit in Las Vegas, by the way.
Yeah, $20.
Really if I lose anything.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Let's enjoyed your comments about cognitive biases. There are at least 50 of those known. How can a decision maker ensure that they avoid all of them?
So biases, as I said, it's not a bad thing, because when it forms, it is formed in your gut feeling. It gives you a startup. You need those biases. So the best, I don't know if you really need to go through all of them to make sure that you're not, you know, attacked by all of them. But after a few, working on some of them and taking some tests for yourself, like, you know, there are all kind of a different NTGI tests. There are all kind of a different tests as a leader that you can find out what is your strength and what are your weaknesses. You realize there are some of the biases that are my weaknesses and I need to deal with those. And you are being careful about those more, you know. Crowdsourcing is always worked great. You know, working with some people, 6, 7 people, and ask them questionnaire, survey, always worked great.
Okay, and related, there's biases and then there's politics. So it's not uncommon for someone to say something that they want, say something not because they believe it, but because they want someone else to think they believe it. So how do you account for politics? Corporate politics. I don't even want to go near.
Right. I understand. I would say maturity. Grow up.
Yeah.
You know, you cannot change people, but you can change yourself.
Yeah.
That's the only advice I have. You know, there is a book I recently finished. It's called Leadership and Self-Deception. If people read that book, they will understand that there is no way you can change politics of other people, but you can come out of that box and avoid being in that box.
Okay, excellent. Next question. Many leaders preach the same thing, but don't necessarily do the same. GE leaders teach the same things over the last 4 decades under Jack Welch, and many of GE managers are now CEO of many US companies. What happened to GE in your opinion?
Okay, so I'm going to say something a lot of people might not like at all. Jack Welch was never a hero and role model for me. I read his books and I read his views as well. And I think all of his views were driven by quarterly profit. And this is the result of that type of a thinking. A leader absolutely has a responsibility, specifically for a public company, to deliver on quarterly result, but not to the expense of losing the strategy and long-term goal of the company. And this is exactly the reason for that.
Yeah, no, you definitely have to view Jack Welch in the context of history too. The person who asked the question agrees with you, so it wasn't as controversial as you thought. Good answer. So we have a follow-up question about random events. Do you think that the correlation time of the random event compared to the system response should be a factor in model development? I hope you understand that one. That was, I don't have enough brain cells to interpret that one. I'm
reading it.
Okay.
So this is a big assumption to assume, first of all, there is a correlation between random event and system responses.
Okay.
You know, that's, and even if there is a correlation on that, it's going to be a very nonlinear complex correlation. And I tell you why I'm very cautious to make that correlation, because a system is not just processes and bunch of suppliers, management issues and everything. A system is full of people, and people have good days and people have bad days, and people gain experience, people leave the company, and therefore that relationship is very dynamic. It's very changing, you know. It's very difficult, you know. In a lot of other places, for example, they have all of these parameters that they add together and they come up with one big thing called performance.
Yeah.
Some of other places, they multiply by each others, you know. I actually have my own formula. I don't do that. I do something else, trying to model that. So everybody has a different model approach, but yes, they are related. Of course, they are related.
Excellent. Any more questions? While the audience is thinking it over, I'd like to ask another one. That book,
Sure.
Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke, I'm curious how you found it, because I saw Annie speak in Santa Barbara
Ah,
a couple of years ago, and she has a really exceptional worldview that goes way beyond poker, calling what she thinks about the way you should think.
right.
Poker is almost not descriptive enough of what she thinks. So I'm
First of
curious.
all, she's very highly educated person. If you read her biography, she dropped from a PhD in mathematics basically, and
Yeah.
never finished it. But she is actually also wrote another book that I've been waiting for 2 months in the waiting list from Amazon to buy it. Actually, it's supposed to come now outside. The book was introduced to me by our CFO, actually, Kevin McDonald, who is our CFO. He recommended the book to me, and when I started reading it, I just said, man, you should have given this book to me 20 years ago. And I know my boss read it after that, our CEO read it after that. It's a great book. It's a great book.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Can you give an example of poor planning with good outcomes via good strategy?
So this usually works for programs that are not really a mass production type of a program. Mostly they are typical R&D programs that is resulting in production of one. In our company, we have an R&D department of almost 30 people, and they're working on different various projects. And poor planning is part of the game, because that's how R&D starts. You really don't know your boundaries. You really don't know what you're trying to do. All we have to do is at every step, every week, try to assess, you know, our assumptions, because you make some assumptions and you go forward and come back and correct them. And that's the strategy.
Okay, thank you. Last call for questions. Hamed, if you're looking at Q&A, there's one more question, but I don't know if you want to answer it or not.
I don't see anything.
No. Oh, no?
No.
Maybe it just came to me.
Okay.
It looks like it's in Arabic, so
yeah, I can see that. That's actually in Farsi, in Persian. It's not in Arabic.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's not a question. It says it was very good. Thank you very much. Goodbye. And I don't know why it's written in Farsi. I have no idea.
Okay.
and it's from anonymous, so I think.
Yeah,
there's no question.
I knew I was not going to be able to communicate that.
Yes.
Okay, that concludes our Q&A then. So before we send you on your way, I think we have an announcement to make. Actually, before we do that, Hamed, we were looking for someone to introduce, but I don't see his name on the list.
No, I was hoping Wahid is going to join us, because he told me he tries, but he's not. But I have somebody else actually here, Allison, who is the VP of P&C in AeroVironment. and I emphasize a lot on PNC today, people and culture, and basically human resources. And I'm very happy to see Allison is here.
Okay, good. Well, welcome, Allison. Do you want to give her a chance to say hi, or we'll just—
It's up to Allison.
I don't see, oh, there she is.
Okay. Hi, Allison. Thank you
Allison,
for joining.
Hello, thank you. It's nice to see everybody. And Hamed, that was fantastic. It's very interesting to hear Hamed's views presented, and it's truly him and who he is as a leader in AeroVironment. So I was very proud today listening.
Thank you very much, Allison. By the way, this is my plan B. I know someday I'm going to get fired in the engineering department. I'm going to go work for Allison as a PNC person, basically.
there you go.
Yeah.
Get that. You got to get that MBA first, though.
MBA first, yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you very much, Allison.
Okay, so thank you very much for attending this wonderful, informative session. Our next session will be on October 23rd, 12 p.m. It'll be our special homecoming edition. The entire month of October is dedicated to Cal Lutheran homecoming. This is one of those innovations that we found with doing a lot of online types of events. We spread them out over time. So we're going to have a panel of faculty members and alums, and the title of the talk is Back to the Future with the School of Management. It will be moderated by Henry Dubroff, editor of the Pacific Coast Business Times. If you've ever seen Henry moderate, he's one of the best moderators I've ever seen. It's worth tuning in, not just to see the panelists, but to see Henry in action. So thank you again for coming. The video was recorded, and we will post it on the School of Management's YouTube channel so that you can send your friends and colleagues to it, and share Hamed's presentation. But thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your time. It was an honor.
We thank you for participating in today's Forward Together webinar series, brought to you by the School of Management at California Lutheran University. The School of Management offers a broad range of programs and community services. Whether you're looking to upgrade your career, locate current economic data from our Center for Economic Research and Forecasting, or a place to start and grow your business at Hub 101, our community startup space, we invite you to visit us at clu.edu/SOM and join the community as we move forward together.